Today, we're going to clarify the confusion as it relates to rate of return when it comes to marking up money. I think you'll find this interesting. I hope you enjoy. When I meet with clients, there's frequently a significant amount of confusion about the calculation of an overall return and what somebody might have earned on a particular deal. Now, today we are going to look at using some calculators. We've done this in the past. I'm going to get rid of these for just a second. I'm going to set up a note so that we can kind of take notes along the way. But when we're talking about finance, there is significant confusion. And I think it's primarily because we don't teach this in school. And so people are kind of left to their own, just simply to use common sense to calculate out a situation and determine, well, what's the rate of return and whether that deal is worth the time and effort. And what that does, it ends up frequently causing us to miss out on opportunities because we don't fully understand what's happening. So if you think about banks, the way the banks make money is they mark up money. So they simply mark it up. So you give them money, they turn around and they lend it out to somebody, they pay you a certain amount for the use of your money, and then they lend it out to somebody else and they mark the money up. So if you think back, if you're old enough to think back in the 80s, banks were actually paying 9% on a CD. So the bank would pay 9, and then they would lend at 15. So most times people would look at that and say, well, okay, they're earning 6%. But that's not actually accurate. If we calculate this, so we said, okay, the bank earned 9, and at the end of the year, they received 15, so they paid you $9 for the use of your money. At the end of the year, they received 15, and we have a 1-year time frame. You'll see, this might surprise you, they actually earned 66.67%. Now, if we take it out of money context and we put it in everyday life, it probably would make more sense. So let's say if you had a hardware store and you were buying hammers and you're paying $9 for each hammer and you're selling those hammers for $15, you wouldn't say you made 6%. You would say you made a 66.67% profit. It's the same scenario. The only difference is where you're talking about a physical item, a hammer, in the hardware store example, but we're talking about money with the bank. So the bank is simply marking that money up. Now, another interesting little caveat here is if you're old enough to remember history, the bank savings and loans actually got in trouble in the 80s, the late 80s, early 90s. And Alan Greenspan was the Fed chair at the time. And what he said was, well, what we're going to do is we're going to lower Fed fund rates and all, and we're going to allow the banks to then lower what they're paying in interest. So almost overnight, banks started paying on a CD, if you put money with them, started paying 3%. And then they were lending 9%. Now, you might look at that, as most people would, using just common sense and say, well, that's the same difference. It's still a 6% spread. But is it still a 66.67% rate of return? Let's do the math. So you put $100 with the bank paid you $3. At the end of the year, at the end of 1 year, you've paid them 9. Now the bank's rate of return went to 200%. That explains, if you go back and look historically at that savings and loan crisis, that explains why almost overnight the savings and loan business got shored up financially. because their rate of return with the same spread, their rate of return went from 66.67% to 200%. It was extremely profitable for the banks. And as you look at that, if you think it through for just a minute, you may look at that again and say, something doesn't seem right. Well, if all the bank had was $9 to work with, in the first option, they could only do one deal. They had $9, you put $100 with them, they gave you $9 for the use of your 100, and then they charged somebody else 15. In scenario 2, if all they had was $9 to work with, they could actually do 3 different deals. They could have you put $100 and they do a deal. They could have somebody else come in and put $100 and they do a deal, and somebody else put $100 and they do a deal. So that could actually do 3 deals using the same $9. So when you calculate that return, if you take the 66.67% and multiply it times 3, guess what your number is? It's 200. When you begin to get clarity on this, you start seeing opportunities that in the past you might have looked at and said, I don't know that that's even worth the effort. And unfortunately, because this is not taught, it's not taught in school, really not taught anywhere, for most of us, we end up missing out on ultimately accessing our maximum potential because we leave opportunities on the table not fully understanding what was the potential rate of return there. And as you can see here, when it comes to money, things get a little bit cloudy about what rate of return that we're getting or dealing with. So if you have questions about this or anything else related to insurance planning, retirement income planning, calculating a deal like this to determine what your potential rate of return is, don't hesitate to give me a call here at Westside Advisors and Insurance Services. I hope you have a great week.